Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today a review of the new horror anthology Elemental Forces, edited by Mark Morris. This comes out this week on the 8th of October, and if you're a fan of modern horror short stories, you should definitely check it out. It's a very good collection. It's actually the fifth in a series of collections that Mark Morris is doing with Frame Through Press. This is the first one that I've read. The series has become known as the ABCs of horror, and when I go through them with you, you'll be able to tell why. But Mark very kindly sent me all 5 volumes, so I'll definitely be dipping into the earlier ones soon. So the first one is After Sundown. The second one is Beyond the Veil. The third is Close to Midnight. The fourth is Darkness Beckons. And the fifth, clearly, is Elemental Forces. So far, they've been lucky with the letters of the alphabet they've had. It'll be interesting to see how they cope when they get to some of the more unusual letters like Q and Z. But yeah, I shall look forward to seeing what titles Mark comes up with for those. The concept for all 5 of these volumes so far is identical, and I think it's a really great concept. So these are all new original stories. 16. So each book has 20 stories in it, which is a pretty much perfect number for a short story collection, I think. 16 of the stories are commissioned, so they approach writers that they want to write a story for the collection, and 4 of them are submitted via open submission. So they have an open submission for each volume. So you get, as well as some established writers in these volumes, you get authors you've never heard of before. This one definitely had some authors I'd heard of and was keen to read more by, not least Poppy C. Bright or Billy Martin, who I don't think is... I'm not close to... I don't follow these things closely, but I don't think Poppy C. Bright has published anything for quite some time. So really great to read a short story by him. You've also got Laurel Hightower, whom I'm a big fan of, Gwendolyn Keist, Tim Major and Will McLean, both of whom I've read recently. Sarah Langan, whose book Good Neighbours I really enjoyed a few years ago. David J. Show, so a name from the kind of splatterpunk era, who's another fantastic horror writer, and Paul Tremblay as well. So some really solid writers in here, contributing new, fresh stories. So a great concept for a collection, and I always love reading new horror, and it's very much central to the idea of these books is that they are new. They are reflecting the horrors of the modern day. They are, they're supposed to be something that readers will chime with, because they are, deliberately, they've deliberately chosen to only publish new stories and not have any reprints in here. I think it's a really, really good concept, and I think horror is a genre that is always useful for us as individuals to reflect on what's happening in the world and how we're feeling about the world. Horror is a way for us to safely confront our fears and kind of digest them and reflect upon them. So I think having a horror anthology series that always focuses on brand new stories is a great use of horror as a genre. And Mark Morris reflects on that in the introduction to this book. So he talks about an introduction to a horror anthology that Ramsey Campbell edited back in the 80s. He talks about Ramsey Campbell's introduction to that and how that talks about the importance of horror as being something that allows us to reflect on what's going on in the world around us. I was thinking about that when I read this, and there's a theme that runs through quite a lot of these stories, which I think is probably often a central theme to horror anyway, but the theme of kind of ambiguity and uncertainty. There's something really frightening, isn't there, about things we don't understand, about the things that are unknowable. That for me is one of the most terrifying things. But I was reflecting on the fact that really came out as a theme in the stories in this book, and thinking about how that feels like something which is quite a current thing. There's so much uncertainty in the world at the moment, not necessarily because the things that are happening are different from things that have happened before, but just because it feels like so many of them are happening at once. So we've got wars in two different places, in the Middle East and in Europe. We've still got the shadow of the pandemic looming over us. We've got increasing extreme political groups, gaining traction in different countries around the world. So it feels like there's a load of different things happening at the moment, which are all unsettling. And we don't know how any of them are going to end up. We don't know if there's going to be another pandemic. We don't know how either of those wars will end up resolving themselves. We don't know what political parties are going to come to power in different countries and what policies they may implement as a result of that. But I think there's also an uncertainty, kind of that you see kind of globally at the moment about personal things as well. So I think many people feel less certain about their own identities than maybe people did in the past. We're questioning our own identities more, which I think is a positive thing, a good thing, but it can be unsettling as well. And also I think as nations we increasingly feel uncertain about what our national identity is, and that's something that right-wing parties and groups definitely capitalise on. We've seen that here in the UK with the riots in the summer, which were very much about people claiming that they were defending a kind of British identity, which isn't necessarily an identity that everyone in Britain shares, but which people felt was being threatened in some way. I definitely don't agree with with that view, but I think it is a view that some people hold. So there is just a general uncertainty about so many things at the moment, and I think horror really interestingly can tap into that and reflect on that, and I certainly found that the stories in this collection did. So anyway, let me actually start talking about the book. So it's a really good collection. So 20 stories, as I said. There isn't a bad story in this collection. I enjoyed all of them. There's a lot of variety here, and a really interesting variety to the stories. There's some folk horror, there's some kind of darkly comic horror, there's some very weird horror. So there's a story called Dog-Headed Men, which was very, very strange indeed. I think my favourite stories were probably that Poppy Z. Bright story, which is the first story, which I thought was really good. There's one by Gwendolyn Keist, which has a wonderful ambiguity to it and reminded me a lot of some of Shirley Jackson's short stories. I thought that was a very, very well done one. And there's an Andy Davidson story which touches on themes of suicide, which was very effective as well. But overall, it's just the freshness of this collection that impresses. The fact that there is that variety to the stories, I think is great. A lot of the time, horror anthologies have a theme, don't they? Which can be great, but sometimes it can feel a bit much reading a bunch of stories on the same theme, in a single volume. And I imagine it's a struggle for the editors as well to make sure that they don't end up with stories that are too similar to each other. So reading instead a collection that is just completely new, completely fresh, that's the only theme, is that these are new stories, I thought worked really well, and I definitely enjoyed it, and I'm very much looking forward to dipping back into those previous volumes as well. So yeah, if you're looking for a horror anthology of brand new fiction from some interesting writers with a nice variety of stories, then I definitely recommend Elemental Forces. So, hope you found that interesting. If you've read any of the books in the ABCs of Horror collection, do please let me know. Let me know what you thought of them. Let me know what your favourite one has been so far. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.